By and large, most people have curious minds. Most of us love a mystery. Maybe not a full-on Sherlock Holmesian mystery, but we like to understand why things happen and where they came from. Language can often help with this by giving clues about the origins of things. But language and common knowledge, and even not so common knowledge, can sometimes lead us astray. Sometimes the things we think we know, including where they come from, are completely wrong. Number 10. Mongolian beef is Taiwanese. In a normal world, if you name a thing after a place, then it has to be where it comes from. Canadian bacon is from Canada, German shepherds are from Germany, Mongolian beef is from Mongolia, except the world is often built on deception and misdirection, and you can't really trust a name these days. For instance, that popular dish is not Mongolian at all. Made with flank steak and coated in sweet ginger, soy sauce, and garlic marinade, Mongolian beef is a staple at most Chinese restaurants. It's actually, though, a dish from Taiwan and not from Mongolia at all, so, well, why the perplexing name? The dish gets its name not from where it came from, but from what it's cooked in. In this case, a Mongolian chafing dish. Mongolian barbecue is popular in Taiwan, and this is where the dish was first created, cooking in the chafing dishes and then growing in popularity from there. Number 9. German chocolate cake isn't German. Chocolate cake is popular, and with good reason. It's delicious. 5% of people in one survey said it would be the only cake they would ever eat, while 84% said they liked it and only 6% were not fans. 6% insane people. Of course, there are many different kinds of chocolate cakes, from lava cake to fudge cake to chocolate truffle and so on. And then there's German chocolate cake. It's a layered cake with a pecan and coconut frosting, making it quite a bit different from a standard plain chocolate cake. In another case of tricky words not really indicating where something comes from, German chocolate cake is 100% not German. It's an American creation. Pecans and coconuts are not particularly German as far as ingredients go, so maybe that's no surprise. So, well, why the name? Well, that's thanks to the inventor of the sweet chocolate that inspired it, Sam German. German invented a new kind of baking chocolate in 1852. For a long time, it was called German's chocolate. In 1957, a woman in Texas unleashed a homemade cake recipe which used German's chocolate in a Dallas newspaper, and suddenly the chocolate became famous, as did the cake made from it. In reprinting the recipe over the years, it changed from Germans to German, and the rest is tasty history. Number 8. Wet dog smell doesn't come from the dogs themselves. They don't call dogs man's best friend for nothing. The human and dog bond stretches back thousands of years. From big, burly St. Bernards to tiny Chihuahuas, dogs are wonderful. Well, except when they're not. Like when they smell, when they're wet. But hold on a minute, not so fast. Well, that's not actually the dog's fault, because that smell doesn't technically come from the dogs. As any dog owner can attest, a wet dog smells much more pungent than a dry one. It's literally its own brand of stink and easily recognizable. Because it happens to dogs, we assume the dog itself is the cause, but it's actually a stanky stew of the yeast and bacteria found in the dog fur that causes it. More specifically, is the waste matter left behind by those tiny organisms. They poop in your dog's hair, and the hair gets wet and rehydrates the poop, and oh well, the poop stinks. Because bacteria and yeast are the sources of the stink, some dog breeds are actually worse than others when it comes to the smell. If you have a wrinkly dog like a pug or a Shar-Pei, it's going to house more smell than a sleeker, smoother dog, so keep that in mind. Number 7. Angora wool comes from rabbits. If you wanted to get a nice sweater, you might look into one made from Angora wool. It's a little pricier than normal wool, but it's very warm and luxurious, and it's probably worth the price if you want a nice garment. Most wool comes from sheep, and there is a species of Angora goat that is bred specifically so that its wool can be harvested, and, well, this all seems relatively cut and dry, doesn't it? But the truth is, it's not so simple. Angora goats produce mohair, not Angora wool. Angora wool actually comes from Angora rabbits. Unlike sheep, goats, or even alpacas, which can all be raised for their wool, shorn and then shorn again later while they live relatively happy lives, things are not so pleasant for the rabbits. If you're the kind of person who wants ethically sourced and cruelty-free clothing, you're probably going to want to avoid Angora wool entirely, since as much as 90% of it comes from Chinese farms where the animals are often treated very cruelly. Number 6. Oil and gas don't really come from dinosaurs. In recent years, fossil fuels have been a serious subject of debate. Our reliance on them has led to an increased pollution and climate change, and the world is in desperate need of a solution. And there have been plenty of ideas proposed. Solar is obviously a big one, but fossil fuels like coal and oil don't seem to be going anywhere, even though we're on track to run out by 2052 or so. And it's not like we can make more of them because they all come from dinosaurs. No, they don't. That's not true. Natural gas, coal, and petroleum do come from dead biomatter, but that dead stuff is by no means a herd of velociraptors. Instead, it comes from things like phytoplankton and other aquatic microorganisms that died long, long ago, many millions of years before the dinosaurs even existed, in fact. Even coal predates the dinosaurs by, I don't know, about 75 million years. Most of the fossils we rely on were formed between 419 million and 358 million years ago. That's well before any giant lizards were stomping around. You may have a little bit of dinosaur soft tissue in the mixture, but not much. Number 5. English muffins aren't English. They're American. An English muffin relies on 2 words to describe to you the nature of what it is. It's a muffin, and it comes from England. Somehow, it's neither of those things in real life, though. They're the foundation of the insanely popular Egg McMuffin, and people have enjoyed them for breakfast for years, though they seem quite a bit closer in nature to a biscuit than what most people would consider a muffin. But that aside, it's the English part that's entirely false. The closest English muffins get to Britain is Samuel Barth Thomas, their inventor. He was British, but he was living in America, and he invented them in America as well. His original bakery was in New York, and it actually still exists today. Number 4. Pork butt is a pig's shoulder. Sometimes we'll change the name of a thing to make it sound more appealing, like how Chilean sea bass became known as the more popular name for Patagonian toothfish because Patagonian toothfish does not sound very appetizing. Somehow, the exact opposite thing happened to pork butt. It's from a pig, so the pork part makes sense, but it's not the butt. And even though the butt has other less immature meanings in the English language, it's still the first thing most people are going to think of. But fear not, if you like pork butt, you're not eating the rear end of a pig. The butt of the pig is actually its shoulder. So why call it butt when it's the shoulder? Well, it's that pesky language thing again. Butt is a word used to refer to the thicker end of something. It's how it came to be related to the rear end of a living thing. But it's the same reason a gun has a butt or anything else that has a thick and girthy portion to it. So the thick shoulders of a pig came to be known as the butt. Number 3. Himalayan salt comes from Pakistan. Salt has been a hot commodity for centuries. It's much easier to get and less of a status symbol today than it was long ago, but it's one seasoning that no chef in the world should be without. And it has developed its own sort of snooty artisanal subculture in recent years. It's not enough to just have plain salt. You can get sea salt, of course, but there's also gourmet salts, red sea salts from Hawaii, pink Peruvian salts, alderwood smoked salt, and sulfurous black salt. The most popular, arguably, though, is Himalayan salt. You could head down to Walmart and buy a shaker of it right now. You'll notice something interesting if you do buy your Himalayan salt from Walmart, though, and that's where it comes from. It's sourced from Pakistan. And to be fair, the Himalayan mountains do run through Pakistan, but for whatever reason, the two are rarely associated with one another when it comes to the world of salt. And the salt is not mined anywhere near those mountains, actually. Instead, it comes from different mountains, ancient seabeds, really, in a place called Kura. Number 2. Diamonds do not come from coal. We know Superman is the strongest hero in DC Comics, except for when he isn't, and just to show you how tough he is, the Man of Steel can even crush coal into a diamond in his bare hands. He even did it in a movie. This makes sense to us in the audience because we know that diamonds are created when carbon is subjected to extreme pressure that forces it into a perfect diamond out of that mostly unimpressive black coal that it used to be. The downside to this scenario is that diamonds do not come from coal at all. They never have. It's true that diamonds and coal are both made of carbon, but then a lot of things are made from carbon. Coal comes from biomatter, plants and animals that died millions of years ago, buried and compressed for millions of years, becoming coal. But diamonds are older than most of the life on Earth, and they formed well before most coal ever did. Diamonds are formed in the Earth's mantle, subject to incredibly hot volcanic temperatures and pressures, and then they're forced up closer to the surface over time. So while coal and diamonds are cousins, that's about as far as the relationship goes. Number 1. Vodka does not come from potatoes. You can ferment almost anything in the world to make alcohol. Fruits and grains are obviously the most popular choices, but the sky's the limit if you want to get creative, and when it comes to vodka, there's a strong and popular belief that the humble potato is the foodstuff of choice for making it. This belief doesn't come from nowhere. There's evidence to suggest that potatoes, which didn't come into Europe until the 1500s, were not well regarded for many years. As a result, when the governments of certain nations began cracking down on alcohol production, potatoes became a reliable option for making new stuff because they were cheap and no one really wanted them. But vodka was being produced before potatoes, and it's still being made now with very little of it actually being made from potatoes. Vodka can be made from rice, corn, wheat, sorghum, molasses, beets, and almost anything else that grows. Potato vodka is actually much harder to come by, and only around 3% of all vodka is sourced from potatoes.